Welcome to episode 588 of the Barcelona podcast, brought to you by the Blue Wire Podcast Network. I'm Dan Hilton, and while it does feel like the season is over, I know a lot of people have already checked out and are just looking forward to seeing what kind of, if any, transfer business happens for FC Barcelona in the coming weeks and months. There are still matches being played, including a big one against Real Sociedad today, which we're going to talk about now. And a big reminder for me is that Barcelona still plays with two teenagers that could very well be in this team for a while, and I think a lot of the players who played in today's game will likely be in the squad next season. So there are things still to look for and hopefully find some positives amid some of the negatives. A big thank you, as always, to the Patreons who keep this show going even when the season is quote-unquote over already, as well as everyone else who either subscribes on YouTube or follows along on the podcast apps or follows me anywhere on social media. So without further ado, let's dive in. The 5 headlines from Barcelona's 2-0 win over Real Sociedad. Headline 1 is Lewandowski's labor. Let's get it started with the starting 11 because Pedri was back in and Araujo was rotated for Inigo Martinez, which some journalists said was due to some nagging injuries. Then Xavi himself said no, it was just for rotation. So an interesting choice, but either way, Inigo Martinez against his former side. It was a good job to start this game by Raphinha early on, dropping in and playing Cancelo on the overlap. Raphinha, you're going to hear in this game, I thought was good from start to finish. Cancelo, I thought was poor from start to finish, and that kind of summed all that up as Cancelo misplayed that very first overlap. There was no Zubimendi for La Real, so Turdientes was playing in a double pivot with Mikel Moreno, with Oyarzabal and Brais Mendes, the two attacking midfielders underneath Becker. So they were set up to press, but not too hard, get out on the counterattack, but really muddy things up in the middle of the field, which I think this game really was kind of messy in the middle of that park, for better or worse, as the game opened up. There was a lot of possession for Real Sociedad as well in the first 10 minutes. I did think they got it right from the jump to try to slow that game down on the road, and they haven't had the best form of late, and with those different pieces missing, and we'll talk about the subs as well later on in this match review, that Real Sociedad didn't feel like they were at their best, and so they kind of found the game as they went along. The first good Barca moment came from Lewandowski tracking down the ball and then playing that ball a little too quickly forward, trying to catch La Real backline sleeping. But I think it was good on Lewandowski to show a little bit of leadership to start this match. If Real Sociedad is ready to play and put their boots on, I need to be ready too. Because it did feel like a little bit of a labor of love from Lewandowski giving such good effort when he knows he's been in the news and having to respond to reports that the club might be trying to ask him, hey, can you maybe not take that pay increase that we need you to get and decide to take some big money move elsewhere? No, it sounds like Lewandowski is going to be sticking around and not leaving, aka he's going to enjoy that big pay increase regardless of his form next season in a beautiful city like Barcelona. But he also doesn't want to spend the whole season next year and the end of this season getting booed. So I think that energy and effort, obviously he's a professional that does not want to see his level dip, that actually wants to make good on that contract and making more of an argument on whether or not any player, as far as the wages that De Jong and Lewandowski are on next season, could make good on their contracts. And don't worry too much, we're going to talk more about the big Polish striker on the podcast scheduled for tomorrow. Headline 2 is Cubarsí versus Becker. This I felt like was the big mano-a-mano matchup that if it went one way, Real Sociedad win. Because it went Barcelona's way, Barcelona wound up winning. Starting in the 19th minute, Becker got his chance that Ter Stegen stopped, and at that point too, the game had opened up, which put Cubarsí on a bit more of an island by himself with Becker in transition. 23rd minute, we saw it again, Becker offside on the counterattack goal. Cubarsí had come to step forward, being more reactive, and clearly Inigo Martinez, then dealing with Becker, had the forward who joined La Real in January from Union Berlin. He had him goal side, but it was awful close to the halfway line. That said, Inigo Martinez played this high line perfectly, and I do trust that the veteran center back was not going to be caught out. He knew that he was on the right side of the midfield line, and he knew that the attacker was goal side, so that was going to be called offside every time. Moments later, Gundogan almost got in behind, but couldn't get the ball out of his feet, showcasing how this game had opened up. And I usually don't skip around too much, but let's finish up the matchup with Cubarsí and Becker. Jumping to the 43rd minute, Becker got behind Cubarsí, but the shot was way wide. It's really the only time when Cubarsí got his hips wrong and Becker got in behind for pace. 61st minute, a little bit of life from Real Sociedad, and Cubarsí was still up to it. Good focus from him. He and Cancelo putting in blocks at that point. And in the open field, Becker, I think, would have made any player suffer when they were playing the high line that Barcelona were. And we saw in the first half of the season that kind of didn't matter who was at that back line before Cubarsí was ever even brought up. Playing a high line and playing with fire, Barca has been caught out this season. And that happened quite often with Iñaki Peña in goal, which brings up another conversation I think we're going to have tomorrow on the podcast about Ter Stegen and the news about him staying or leaving and Barcelona's decision on him. All we do know is that Cubarsí is sticking around, and he dealt with Becker well, very much like he dealt with so many other forwards around both the Champions League and in the Liga this season. And I also like the fact that Cubarsí, while he's probably being stretched a bit too thin by Xavi, if he's going to be trusted in these situations, very much like Araujo, he was poor the last few weeks. That being Cubarsí didn't have his best, his Barca's backline didn't have their best, but he bounced back really well today. 82 of 87 of his passing, and I don't want to take that part of his game for granted in the build-up. He wasn't asked to do as much build-up today, and unlike a lot of the opponents recently, Real Sociedad weren't defending as narrow as recent opponents for Barcelona, so that meant a lot more from Lewandowski and Lamine Yamal and Raphinha picking the ball up a little bit deeper and those midfielders needing to push. So a lot less of Cubarsí needing to break through multiple lines for Real Sociedad. Instead, it was more of a man-to-man marking system, and Barcelona were also trying to press a bit higher as well. So he just had to be ready to go and focused when Real Sociedad went to counterattack. And that is what Cubarsí has. He has just devout focus from minute one all the way until the final whistle. And that is something you cannot teach and something that continues just to blow me away with how good he is. Headline 3 is who's protecting who. Back to the 26th minute, Lamine Yamal on the doorstep, almost got the opener. Good interplay from Barcelona through the middle, because while Real Sociedad were playing through the middle, so were Barcelona, and they moved the ball quickly enough to get Lamine Yamal in a 1v1 situation. He still had a lot of work to do, and on that final move, the ball was stuck behind him and he couldn't get enough power on the shot, but still good looks from Barcelona. 33rd minute, a fun skill move from Koundé as well that got oohs and ahs from Montjuic. The very threat of Lamine Yamal has also given Koundé a bit more space on the right side than he definitely had last season. Meanwhile, some miscommunications on the left side between Lewandowski, Cancelo, Raphinha, and Pedri, not so great. 36th minute, another good build-up, and Raphinha did well to get himself into a central position, but he had a shot blocked. But Raphinha, as I mentioned, from minute one, was percolating. 38th minute, Raphinha gets central again, and Gundogan carries as Pedri makes a diagonal run. Good movement from the midfield and Barcelona's forwards. It comes to Raphinha, who beat the keeper but couldn't beat the post, and the rebound was too far behind Gundogan to get proper contact on it. At that point, you're like, it's 0-0, but Barcelona had their chances. Then the 40th minute, here comes the goal, Lamine Yamal on the end of it. But so much of this goal goes Lewandowski, dropping in from midfield, knowing he's going to get absolutely clobbered by Lamine, who had to step forward to him, which means that if Lamine is with Lewandowski at midfield, if you could play that ball right the way Lewandowski did on Gundogan, that means there's only one center back and the outside backs and the midfielder that had dropped in to contend with Lamine Yamal coming downhill. And Gundogan, good on him. He waited until all three defenders were looking for his shot before the FIFA setup for Lamine Yamal. And all right, maybe not exactly a tap-in like FIFA, but Lamine Yamal had a pretty open goal as long as he passed it in with enough pace, which he did. And very much like Cubarsí, not the best few weeks from Lamine Yamal recently, but comes back in, and very much like he was in the match last week, I thought he was Barcelona's best on the day. Even in a day when I didn't think Barcelona brought their best. They weren't great today, but even in the first half, that kind of summed up Barcelona's full performance. They were good enough in the first half, and they were good enough on the day to navigate Real Sociedad's possession. They were good enough on the press, and they were good enough in transition themselves to basically negate the good things that Real Sociedad were doing, and doing them at a higher level at home. Headline 4 is navigating the subs. 51st minute, Gundogan gets the yellow for a high boot and not a red, and I think that was the right call, even though Lamine got the worst of it. Still a yellow. Lamine also dipped his head in, and clearly not malicious, which means that the German will be out against Almeria now, and I would say on paper it's a match that Barcelona should win, but with the walking wounded, especially in that midfield, there's a reason why Gundogan has had to play more minutes than any other player for Barcelona, outfield or in goal. So I think he will be missed against Almeria, but hopefully the team can still get a result without him. And he does get a rest here at the end of the season before going to the Euros and likely playing most minutes for Germany as well. So it'll be a big summer for a player who isn't getting any younger in his 30s. Fun little tussle between Lamine Yamal and Aaron Burrow. Aaron Burrow stood him up for the first time, but Lamine Yamal got him a few minutes later, and the young outside back picked up the yellow. 65th minute, Raphinha, not too far away again. Pedri found him wide open just outside the penalty box. Ramiro had to make the save. I did think that Zubimendi was missed in this game for Real Sociedad because Marino does want to get forward and he does want to push into those positions, but I would argue that Torrentes is not a natural defensive midfielder. He is kind of an interior as well. I would say that both of them are kind of natural eights, Marino and Torrentes, so there was some space in that penalty box when Barcelona could put some passes together because none of those midfielders were dropping into the spaces that Zubimendi is usually covering, and Raphinha kept popping up in those spots, and it was a good job by Barcelona to exploit that space. But Real Sociedad with Ramiro was good enough to be up to the task. He had a punch out on the corner right after he made that save on Raphinha. Then 2 minutes later, Gundogan gave the ball away too easily. Bryce Mendes got too fancy against Ter Stegen trying to beat him in his far post. He went wide with a shot that should have tied it up. So I don't want to forget that there. 70th minute, Pedri and Christensen on for Roberto and Fermin Lopez. Meanwhile, Takefusa Kubo, Tierney, and Barrenechea all enter for La Real. And on paper, it did look like advantage Real Sociedad with those changes. Koundé had to make a clearance just after the subs. Good focus, very much like he's had all season long by Koundé as well. Pedri coming out of this game felt like he was a net positive. The stats for him were good. I'm not going to read them to you, but pretty excellent on the ball. Didn't make any mistakes. And sometimes in this kind of game where things are opened up and you're relying heavily on your forwards to kind of get the job done, and you got to help your back line who are playing a high line, that means you just kind of have to do your job. And we don't know exactly the job he was asked to do, but very much like Christensen, a lot of tireless work from those two today. But people, I think, are going to say, hey, we expect offensive stuff from Pedri, so the visual impact from him offensively was quite minimal. He did play it safe, but I did think his performance kind of reflected the scoreline of 1-0 when he came out. 76th minute, Lewandowski off for Torres, and huge applause, as I mentioned with that first headline, with his work rate from the fans at Montjuic. And it was nice to see that Torres almost scored within seconds of being on the field. Ramiro with a sharp save, and Torres, nice to see he was ready to play. 82nd minute, Barca on the counter, but Cancelo would have needed to pass it over to Ferran Torres the first time, but I think the ball was a bit too far out in front of him, and he got lost between two minds, something he did a number of times today, where I do think Cancelo was pretty poor, and he's overall been pretty poor in the months of April and May, which is not great for Barcelona, obviously. And then headline 5 is double-digit Raphinha. Late VAR check, came in stoppage time, Fermin Lopez with the shot. The ball bounced up into the hand of Odriozola. Originally, that's what everyone thought that they were looking at, but good job by VAR. I know I don't get to say that too often, but good job by VAR. They got the initial ball that hit the arm on the ball that came in. That one easily a handball, so it's a penalty. And without Lewandowski, Raphinha earned it with his performance. And I hate using the term deserve. You know that's not a thing. But Raphinha definitely deserved a goal after his defensive performance and the chances that he had on goal. So for Raphinha, that takes him to 10 goals and 12 assists this season. And that's what you ask from Raphinha. You ask from 10 and 10, just like you got last season. And Raphinha has delivered that. And he is not on too many wages that if Barcelona can use a Nike deal and I don't know, maybe they convince somebody else to help him out to get him back to 1-1. I think Raphinha is a useful member of this squad, more so than I can name at least 7 or 8 players that I would keep over Raphinha, which kind of goes back to the whole thing that I've been arguing now for a few months, that if push comes to shove and Raphinha and Koundé on their wages and with what you could technically get for them on the market, if they decide that they would like to go and Koundé decides, I want to be the consummate center back starter, and Raphinha says, hey, I want to start on the right wing every match for a club, and I want to get EPL wages again, well, I think those are the two players that Barcelona look to kind of agreed to that sale. Because other players are either on too big of wages, or they're too old, or other reasons are keeping other players at the club. I'm not saying Raphinha deserves to be sold. Quite the contrary. I'm saying he's the one that Barcelona have to decide to part with because he's been good this year, and I really like Raphinha even more than I did last season. 94th minute, or Romeo, speaking of being sold, got to see the field for a moment, and that's just a footnote, which nicely transitions us into being able to talk about the final of this game, which is 2-0, which puts Barcelona back in second place, which actually does matter when we're arguing so much about FFP and all the stuff that fans like you and I seem to care about. Because of the stoppage time goal that Alaves scored against Girona on the weekend, Barca now goes back to controlling their own destiny for second place with 3 games remaining. Thursday away at Almeria, home to Rayo next Sunday, and away to Sevilla the following Saturday to end the season. Those are all 3 winnable games, and that's if Girona don't drop any more points. So Barcelona, win your final 3 games, get second place, get that yummy Spanish Super Cup money for next season, and then maybe you can figure some things out in the offseason. Tomorrow, I didn't want to be talking about Vitor Roque again, but that's exactly what we're going to do, because this is a story that is not going to be going away until I think he's out of the club, whether in a loan and a permanent sale. So we're going to talk about that again tomorrow. Special thank you, as always, to the patrons again for making these shows possible. Twitter, Instagram, close Facebook group, Discord. That's where you can follow along with the communities. A good rating on the podcast apps and subscribing to the YouTube channel, a big help as well. Feel like they matter. Thanks so much for listening to the show. Until next time, we'll talk to you soon. Forza Barca.